watching the Australian Guitar Show. This is Aaron of Fenech Guitars up here in Miami, which great spot, man. We landed this morning and literally just started looking at property. I just thought let's move in here,
mate. I have to pinch myself some days. Yeah. It's I live about 600 meters down the road. I surf 400 meters that way.
Yeah.
So it's great. And as I said, we just did the Melbourne Guitar Show where we ran into each other. And no offense to people in Melbourne, but the weather would just drive me nuts.
What do you think of the show?
I had a ball. Yeah. So that was our first ever guitar show. Despite lots of people sort of saying, why aren't you doing guitar shows? And we've just been very busy focusing on, building the guitars that I want to build and make. And then I always knew I'd stick my head up at some point. And as I said, we finished the bottom renovation because the workshop's just doubled in size, and I had 4 weeks. So I thought, why not make a dozen guitars in 4 weeks and get them down to the show? It was excellent. The response we had was fantastic.
Yeah. So it's amazing that you built that amount of guitars in that amount of time for because you're essentially a 2-man operation.
And my wife. So
sorry.
Yeah. So I've got Rob, who's like our shop hand, does kind of sanding and things like that. And then my wife Stacey, she's here during school hours. Pretty much does everything in between, from marketing through to designing stuff in AutoCAD. When as I said before, I still do things old school, but then when we need to make a jig more professionally, we'll use the CNC machine to make that, and so that's her kind of domain. Yeah. So this is kind of where we do most of the sort of roughing work, or the kind of timber work, I suppose. So anything that's dusty or noisy or gets cut, chopped. So some stock we get in billet form, other stock we get broken down, it's cut for us. So we've got a couple of CNCs, and predominantly you would have seen on Stacey's computer there, using for a lot of neck roughing. So all the final stuff still has to be done by hand. Yep. And roughed out and start with the billets like that. That's some mahogany. So I'm just sort of putting through and squaring up the sides now, and we'll get 2 necks out of that block. So all the pieces really, at this point, can't really operate without each other. But I still build the guitars. So what used to take me, these acoustic guitars, probably 5 years ago, would take 100 hours per guitar. I've got that down to, depending on what it is and how many inlays and things like that, might be at 50 hours, some might be at about 25 hours. So there's still a lot of hours involved. But yeah, they were long nights before the show. So I was doing probably 14-hour days. I think the last 2 weeks I did set like 2 weeks straight. So
I mean, that's a massive effort. So was that based on, was that when you decided you'd go to the show?
Yeah, well, I'd always planned to. So we've got some clear goals that we want to achieve, and that sort of goes right through to getting to NAMM as well eventually. And I thought, geez, it'd be nice to exhibit at the Melbourne Guitar Show and let Australia know that we're here, we're a viable option. And I started like any other sort of guitar maker. I'm sort of been at this around 10 years now. And I was making, repairing guitars at home in my spare time, and then 6 guitars turned into 10 guitars, and I was like, okay, well, I'm getting better at this. The guitars were getting better. The feedback I was getting from players was that they were getting better. But it's really hard to transition from 10 guitars a year while you're working full time. So then I came up with the thing about teaching people how to make guitars. So we started the guitar making school, and I ran that part-time while I was still working full-time in a previous profession, and then woke up one day and went, that's it, I've got to take the leap of faith. We use this room as a gluing room, so all the workshops are humidity controlled, but this particular space, so we zone everything off. It's much easier to control everything in here. So you'll see it sitting at 52%, which is exactly what we want for making guitars. And we've got gluing decks in here, so once the sides are cut and trimmed and the backs are jointed and book matched, they go through the sanders, and we bring them in here, and then we start to do all the brace work on go-bar decks. So these are all different radiuses for the back operation, and if you haven't seen one before, so kind of picture there is a back there. you put a brace down, and we use that as the pressure.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
To hold all the braces on. And then the guitars move over here, they'll move into a form, which looks like that. Then we'll load the sides in, glue the blocks in place, and then of course there are some of our bracing patterns for the tops. And a little bit different, I suppose, to how production guitars are made, is that we focus on treating every guitar differently.
Yeah.
And no two trees are the same, so no tree, densities of spruce is different. So we deflection test all the tops to make sure that they're hitting the numbers that we need. So even though the braces are glued in the same position, the way we scallop them or take material away is independent of each guitar. And that's how we're sort of, it takes longer to do it that way, but we feel we get a better product. So quit the full-time job. The school became half of my time, and then guitar production became the second half. But I've been really fortunate that lots of local people have supported me in terms of be it, getting involved with these guys in this space and their support with watching our business grow and supporting us any way they can. Through that, local musicians, loving my guitars and getting on them, playing them, tagging us, supporting us, and then that's sort of slowly extended out. And Melbourne really is that first sort of jump. We've got some dealers now that have come on that are selling our guitars, which was a big leap of...
Down in Melbourne?
In Queensland. It was a big leap of faith for them as well, like Guitar Brothers in Brisbane and more recently the shop at Malulabar as well, so Malulabar Music. And both times that's been a bit of a, I take up half a dozen guitars and, take Craig from Guitar Brothers, he sat and played all of them and spoke to me about, pricing and all these sort of things. And then he bought the stock on the spot, which was that's not lost on me. So that's, and my job doesn't end there either. I'm acutely aware of that they've invested in us to sell that product. And so we're trying to support them as much as possible by doing things like going to the Melbourne Guitar Show. So this is kind of the neutral, clean zone. So we've got a spray booth in here, just turn the light on so you can see. So we do all that spraying in here. Which that lovely smell of nitro is what's left in the room. And into this spot, which is where we do finish off the body assemblies. This is a repair area. So at the moment we've got guitars in here from we've got Matons and Martins and local customers as well. So we do a lot of setup work for local people, interstate people, and it's pretty much just a revolving kind of circle. Yeah, jigs, and here's a nice big block of blackwood. So that'll be turning the guitar backs. So it'll go through the bandsaw and be butterflied out. I was just looking at that block. This is one of Malulabar. This is one of my stock guitars from Malulabar Music. That we came down for a bit of a photo shoot and it's heading back. So that's Australian Gidgee.
Yep. Man, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love your pickguard shape.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's really nice. Just kind of gives it that little bit of extra kind of unique.
Yeah, well, I think too for guitars that, like, I don't know about you, but I identify guitars from the back of the room either via their headstock or the pickguard.
Yep.
You kind of know what they are. So that was quite a costly exercise. We did 2 booths and I drove, 15 guitars down and displays and guitar stands and banners and, all these things. But ultimately that's about supporting those people as well. And the feedback we got was excellent. I'd sort of listen to people walking past and Fenech Guitars, they're American. And then they'd read Gold Coast, Australia, and they go, oh, these guys are Australian. And people would come in, and then other people walking up going, mate, we'll follow you on Instagram. Like, I love your guitars, I've always wanted to play one. Can I play one? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Templates and jigs and stuff, these are all guitar necks. So we're just getting stuff ready now for the next lot of guitars. We do all our side bending on here. And we've got different forms and templates and basically we thin the sides down to around about 2 millimeters. Again, depending on the species, how dense they are. And then load them into here, soak them, wet them. And then that orange thing is a silicon heating blanket. And it's hooked up to a temperature controller and it heats up to around about 160 degrees really quickly. And then we kind of torture chamber it around and bend the timber around and leave it cook for about 10 minutes.
It's pretty easy to crack a bend as you're going, obviously.
Look, I hand bent for years, so we still have hot irons for bending certain areas or tough cutaways. But you get much more consistent bend. And so it's still a process where you're using little cauls like this to bend it around the frame. What it does is it gives you consistent heat and gives you a much better bend, and you lose less material.
Yeah.
So it's okay if you're building 5 or 6 guitars a year, hand bend is fine. But that bending operation used to take me, 30, 40 minutes for 2 sides. A side is bent on this in under 5 minutes. So it's just the way it goes.
It's amazing.
And these are our own designs that we've come up with. A lot of guitar making is, you can't buy this stuff. It's not like a standard trade. So you have to make everything as you go. So, if you're coming up with a template, all of these are just little jigs. That was an electric guitar I was making. And so I still prototype a lot by hand if I've got an idea. It's much quicker. Some people will do it in AutoCAD or something like that. I'm kind of old school. I'll sketch it, cut it, make it, destroy it. So the old saying, if you're going to fail quick, move on. We've developed a small, kind of exclusive range of guitars. And up until now, most of my builds have been, $5,000 plus. So between sort of $5,000 and $7,000. Not everyone's got that money, and that's a lot of money. So the feedback that we've been getting from some of the stores that have got our guitars is, could you broaden the range a little bit? They don't want cheap guitars. The world doesn't need any more cheap guitars. No. So we think we're going to be able to do one at around about the $3,000 mark, and then one at $4,000, and then back into the top end stuff. So that was the launch of that basically. The reception was, these guitars are amazing for that money. So all Australian timbers, all solid, but individually voiced.
You could go and buy a $3,000 off-the-shelf guitar from any brand from all around the world.
Yep.
And it's going to be a nice guitar, exactly like you're saying. But
yep.
Having walked around and seen how you build and know that you put the same level of commitment into that $3,000 guitar that you would into a $7,000 or $10,000, $12,000, $20,000 guitar.
Yep.
You're still there, hands-on, doing it, building it yourself.
That's right. That's
a pretty special quality.
Yeah, there's some real critical aspects to guitars, and so we talk about backs and sides, and Brazilian rosewood this, and Indian rosewood that, and but the heart and soul of an instrument, make no mistake, is the soundboard, and unless you get that part right, and that's the bit where my science background kicks in, and why I was always quite fascinated about guitars in a sense. That if you get the mathematics and the physics right and you treat those guitars individually, you can control and shift things quite accurately. So the main fundamental, the air resonance, all of those things which you can measure, and I spreadsheeted for years. I was a bit of a nerd with that stuff. But I don't do that anymore because my ear's now accustomed to
what you're doing.
Yes, understanding that that's that frequency range. Yeah. But when it comes to voicing and shaping I'm pointing to the braces on the roof.
I'll take a photo of what's on the roof so that people can actually see what you're talking about.
I told people I was going to put a giant soundboard on the roof, and my wife looked at me and went, "You're nuts." But so when it comes to shaping and scalloping those bars, it's the dark art of lutherie. But basically, what I'm doing is controlling mass, so loose and stiff. And you'll hear guitar makers talk about the sides of a soundboard as treble and bass. Loosely, it's defined as treble and bass, but there's lots of other parameters that control that. And then, from there, it's how stiff you make the sides, and it's the timbers that you use, and the depth of the body, and all these little things add up. But the heart and soul, if you want to really keep quality in the guitar, tonally, because then there's finishing as well, and playability, is making sure that the tops are voiced correctly. So, and you can't fast track that. You can't CNC every brace the same. You can, but you end up with quite a mix and a range of sort of tonal, like a tonal palette. It broadens. You'll play a great guitar one day and a shit guitar the next day. This is one of my favourite rooms. This is the timber room. And we've got...
It's kind of like the Nirvana.
yeah. So all of this is beautiful New Guinea rosewood. So we'll get 2 guitar necks out of that back to back. So, we typically, because we're spoiled, can use one-piece guitar necks. There's about 250 guitar necks. And this stuff will season, so even though it's cut, kilned, air-dried at this stage for about 2 years, I probably won't dip into that for probably another 3 or 4 years. So even in here, again, we're controlling humidity. There's a constant humidity thing working in here and everything, stick it out. Timber does this funny thing. You can get it to about 12% moisture content quite quickly in southeast Queensland, just leaving it out. To get it to where we like to use it, which is between 6 and 8, is quite difficult. So you can't do that quickly. We don't anyway. I'm not sure what the others do. We do that quite slowly, which means you're not sitting around waiting. It just means you've got to buy ahead. So we've bought this lot of necks for 5 years' time. These are all ebony fingerboards. There's around about, so this stuff is dry and stable now. There's around about 100 there, and we'll pull those into the next lot of guitars. And again, to get ebony, nice black ebony like this, I would have bought these probably 4 or 5 years ago. And then they were kilned at that time, down to about 12. And, basically I just watched them over time. So we'll joint them straight, let them kick, move, join them again. And that sort of process happens, and we just rotate them through and date everything as we work through that cycle. Lots of people have always tried to put me in this thing as, you're an artisan and you do all these things, and I've never actually wanted to be the guy who makes 10 guitars a year. That's never been my focus. I was honing my craft and my skills so that I could I don't want to make 10,000, and I don't even want to make 1,000. I don't know what that number is. It's probably a couple of hundred. We make less than 100 now, but it's, I think, kind of a little bit more broader than that. So it's about making sure that whoever works for me is really happy and well looked after, and that we've got a really cool group of people that make a small number of guitars, and that we actually do keep that sort of knowledge as much as we can around who buys them, where they go. All their guitars are numbered, serialed, and you lose that if you go too big. And it's not really, if I wanted to make lots of money, I probably wouldn't have chosen guitar making. Yeah,
music, just anything with music.
Anything to do with music.
It's the only industry in the world that literally hasn't moved with the pay scale of everything else.
No. So people sort of say to me, well, why do it? And it's like, well, it's a creative outlet. And I just love what I do, mate. There's not enough hours in the day for me now. I hate it when the sun goes down. I'm excited for the sun to come up. And every day I get to come in and create something that will end up in the hands of a musician that writes a hit song or doesn't write a hit song, sits down and plays some Creedence by the barbecue. Excellent. All this stuff is my master grade stock, so there's some really, really nice sets of Blackwood here, some quite crazy figure, and once that's lacquered out, so pardon the pun, but this stuff doesn't grow on trees. It's about 1% of all that's cut. That's all East Indian rosewood. I was lucky to procure a lot of that. There's a couple of tops that have been braced. That's one of our auditorium tops. This is actually an Australian timber. It's called Silver Quandong. So I suppose part of the thing that we want to do is we're small enough to really care about where we get our timbers from. We try to get stuff sustainably as much as we can. We pick and choose our suppliers, and then we've got a very small bunch of them, and they literally phone me as the tree is felled or it's come down in a storm, and we've got that relationship. 3 things I always say about a great guitar: they've got to sound really good, they've got to look really good, and they have to play really well. And if you tick those 3 boxes, players respond to that. And it's not for us to dictate what someone feels when they pick up a guitar. I'm a player, as you're a player. I want what any other player wants. I want all those 3 things. There's a couple of backs that have been braced, so that's a piece of African Wengi. We keep some exotic stuff, like this is another one coming through. That's bow coat, and you'll see one up the front, Mexican timber. And again, we don't get a lot of this. You can't ask for 50 sets of it. I think we picked up about a dozen sets, and that's probably all I've had in the last 5 years. So we keep it for special orders or our master built line. And I test as much as I can. I do silly things like build guitars and stick them in the roof of my house and try to purposely kill them with heat and all kinds of things, because at the end of the day, I've, for the last probably 5 or 6 years, been making what most people would consider, master built custom guitars. So quite expensive ones. So they're more heirloom pieces, but they need to last. It's really important they need to last, and it's a lot of money. But then you can't discount the fact that somebody's going to go and gig the absolute shit out of that thing and do 300 shows a year and be exposed to all kinds of conditions. So, we're interested in making guitars that can cop that as well.
What I absolutely love hearing is that your passion is genuine. And to meet you in the flesh and hear that, I mean, it just reinforced what I already know, you know. And I think
thank you. Yeah,
people get that. People see that. They see genuine. They see honesty. They see integrity.
Yeah,
and that shines through in every guitar you've built.
I'm stoked. I mean, I go to sleep thinking about how to make guitars better, and you know, my wife and I had this conversation this morning as we were getting the kids ready to go to school. She's like, "Oh my God, all I did last night was design pick guards." In her mind, like, so we're constant, and it's because we get this ability to be able to create something, and you feel like that's my surname and the headstock of that guitar. I take that very seriously. I'm horrified if, you know, a screw goes loose or something happens on that guitar, because it's an extension of yourself. So these are some customers' guitars that are being picked up. This one, guy's coming in this afternoon. That's his custom guitar that we made for his lovely wife. She came in, chose all her timbers. I think this one's Blackwood. So we ship all our guitars with humidity packs. Very important.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is a really nice satin guitar. She wanted a satin finish. Beautiful Blackwood.
Oh man, look at
In the back. So this is... I'm not even sure I want to sell this.
Oh really?
Just might have to stay with me. It's a really beautiful piece of master grade spruce. And that's Brazilian rosewood. Very, very old Brazilian rosewood. So I've had this piece probably 10 years, and I think the story was it came into the country in 1971.
Yep.
And it was probably cut sometime in the 30s. Something a little bit different. Brazilian rosewood on the rosette, Brazilian rosewood on the fingerboard, Brazilian rosewood bridge. Wow. It's this guy's got a couple of my guitars, so he's also picking up his new Bentley Electric, which I'll show you in a minute. So this is his Jumbo, which I borrowed back to just because it's beautiful.
The comments I've been getting on that Bentley,
and
it's so many people.
Well, you should wait. You got to play it, and then you'll.
Yeah, because I didn't get to play it at the show. That's the hard thing.
Look at that for a piece of Blackwood. So yeah, beautiful master grade piece.
We've taken a wander through your acoustic world.
Yeah.
And it does lead to sitting in front of these beautiful Bentleys.
Yeah, they are.
Cool old school 50s Sears Roebuck kind of silver tone kind
of. Yeah, we get all of that.
It's like all these little things rolled into one, and then with this big flare of originality thrown on top.
Like anyone else, you know, I had, you know, Gibsons and I had Stratocasters and I had all these sort of guitars, and they're all great guitars, but there was always things I didn't like or really liked. So I was like, well, why not just try to approach this as I'll throw the kitchen sink at it and put all the things that I think are really important on a guitar. But yeah, the look and the vibe of it, I love Dan Electros. I love that 50s look. There was an old Maton that was kind of inspired one half, and that half's sort of inspired almost a little bit like Gretsch's and the Cat's Eye, and then the bottom is, you know, I sat there just drawing curves, and the bottom shape came from one of my acoustics. So there was all this meld of things, and then, you know, I wanted an ebony fingerboard. I wanted a really nice sort of, that's all hand done, so, you know, when your hand slides down, it gives you a little bit of upper fret comfortability. So I'll talk about the construction of this, and this comes back to that, before we even talk about pickups and things, I was trialling timbers, and the body on this we use Brazilian mahogany, which is plantation grown now, or Queensland maple. They're very similar in terms of density, and it's not any Queensland maple tree, and it's not any Brazilian mahogany tree. So we weigh them. I weigh them to make sure the block weight is just right, and it helps with the resonance. And then we chamber out all of that, and then leave 10 mil of solid timber around the outside. And then the cap on top, I can show you photos of this. It's like remarkably figured Tasmanian blackwood. And it was just what I had, and people were like, you can't go and paint that. And
that's a tough call.
And it's got this beautiful white sap line. It's all fiddleback, but you know, we trialled it at 3 mil, then we trialled it at 4 mil, and then once I got to a particular thickness, I was like, okay, this has got just the right amount of kind of Les Paul push and grunt behind it, with just the right amount of airiness to make it a little bit woody and open. The pickups, Lambertons. And he's new, he's sort of starting out new.
So is that Lamberton or Lamberton?
Lambertons, so L-A-M-B, you can E-R-T-O-N-S, so Lambertons. And he told me about these filter covered things. I was like, man, it's going to suit the vibe. So the back is actually an Alnico 8.
Right.
And the front's an Alnico 5, and they're underwound.
Yep.
They're completely underwound, and you have a shred on it in a minute. Talking about the wiring, we were working with Emerson as a company, and I love their products. And you know, sort of thought, well, what have they got? And so this particular wiring harness is what's in I think it's your $12,000 plus PRSs. So it's really responsive. It's got a big bumblebee in it. It's really simple. We wanted 1 volume, 1 tone. Again, I survey a lot of players who play Les Pauls. What do you do? Everything's on 10.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why? So I wanted something that, you know, right down to where the position of it is, that you can volume ride a bit. And, you know, the difference between playing at 6 is clean, and then 7 is, you know, it's getting hairy, and then, you know, 9's all out warfare. The frets are a product made by T.A.G.S. They're very, very hard and dense, and right down to, you know, we make sure that we glue every single fret in place. There's no dead spots. You go up and tap, the notes are clear and ring true. Go to machine heads, do a volute. So again, a little bit extra strength in case they go on stage, because they are a one-piece neck. And then the idea behind this is that this is all actually connected via one DC connector, like a pedal. And so moving forward, we'll have that scratch guard loaded, and it'll be loaded with P90s or humbucker and a single coil or whatever. And you as a player,
just swap it out as
you've got the carriage, and you just go one clip, bang. I mean, selfishly, I built this for me. And then other people are like, you know, I sort of gig and they go, oh, can we get one? And they're quite...
Which is what that is.
Yeah, this is a custom order for a guy, so that one's sold as well.
Has it got a slight metal flake through it?
No. Oh, yes.
Okay.
He's a mad Holden fan, so that's actually Voodoo Blue.
Voodoo Blue.
Yeah,
right.
From his Holden.
Now, these are a nitro finish too, aren't they?
All nitro, yeah. I do all my guitars in nitro.
You can smell it.
Yeah, you know, well, this one's a bit beaten up. This one's been around the block for, there's probably, I didn't show you the museum of these. There's like 6 prototypes before this.
Oh, so right?
They're all up the back.
And I'm going to, we'll have a quick plug up of this.
Have a blab.
And I'm going to have to make a track soon because I've got to go to this wedding rehearsal.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm up in Queensland. It's such a bonus to be able to steal your time.
Oh, my
because
pleasure.
I know you could be making money right now, and I know that by you sitting here talking to me means you're not.
And it's all part of it, mate. So I'm stoked. Thanks for.
I respect that, but it's something that means a lot to me, and I really appreciate it. And thank you.
My pleasure.
And it's been just cool hanging out. We're gonna have a quick fang of that.
Yeah.
And then I better scoot.
No worries. Let's get it happening. Now, do you normally go on channel 2 or channel 1?
Oh, I'll just go with whatever's going. I see what you mean by that little jump.
But sensitive as, and the tone too. If you're on 1 on your tone, you get the wool, and if you're on, so you can go from, just explore it is what I'd say.
Beast.